pray right before. I'm like, I don't know why, but it's like, I need a thing. And so we were at Horrocks the other day, and I was like, they got all these loose leaf teas. And I was like, oh, that seems like a thing. People drink tea, right? Well, I don't drink caffeine, and I didn't know the one I grabbed had like a high level of caffeine. So this morning, like, my skin's like jittery. I'm like, this is not normal. Lord, help me. All you people who drink caffeine, how do you do that? Regularly, you've adapted. Right.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, right. So if I'm all over the place, just understand it's the caffeine talking. All right, so, I mean, that's a good example of what I was going to lead into, but I got a better one. Have you ever done something that sounded smart in the moment, but halfway through you thought, this is a terrible idea? I should have known that about the caffeine. But Lord knows that I've had many moments, all right? One summer, my cousins and we went to an amusement park. And as soon as we got there, they said, hey, let's go on a ride. Now I should say hindsight, looking back, this is where my first mistake was. I said, I've never been on a roller coaster before. Now, the reason I say this is a mistake, because as you all know, if you ever tell a family that you've never done something, they take it as a personal calling from the Lord to make sure that you do it. They're like, you've never been on one? You've got to go. So, obviously, they point to this roller coaster to which, as far as I can recall, disappeared into the heavens. In fact, I'm willing to bet that it was designed by a group of engineers who really didn't like people. They said, this is going to be so much fun. It's the best one for your first roller coaster. So I did what most people would do when they don't want to look like a coward. I lied to myself. I said, how bad can it be? Famous last words. So we stood in line for what seemed like forever, during which time I gave myself a good old pep talk, you know? I'm like, you're fine. Nothing bad's gonna happen. This is safe. Remember, Eric, children ride this. So we get to the front of the line. The worker says, you're next. To which I should have replied, no, I'm good. But instead, I sat down. The bar came down over me, and I thought, okay, this is secure. This isn't bad. But then it started to go and take that slow climb. And it's like, click, 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 click. By the way, that noise does not help anything when it's going up. But up and up we go. And as it gets closer to the top, people start doing something crazy. They have these giant smiles on their faces. They start putting their hands in the air like they're at a worship conference or something. And then there's me, like, fighting back the tears of terror that are about to burst forth from my eyes. And I'm like white-knuckling the safety bar as if that's going to do anything if something happens, right? And at this moment, I had a bit of clarity. I said, this is not wisdom. This is peer pressure with a safety bar. Now, let me be honest. I was not a believer back then. But the second we dropped from that peak, I was praying like a Pentecostal grandmother. I was like, Lord, forgive me, help me, heal me, save me. Lord, I'll serve you for the rest of my days if I get off this ride alive. It was horrible. I have no idea how you people think that's fun. To this day, I don't understand why they call those places amusement parks, because I was not amused at all. Needless to say, I've not been on a roller coaster since, and don't ask me to get on one either, by the way. But I did get some wisdom from that moment. And that wisdom was, just because someone says you gotta do it, doesn't mean it's always wise to do it. Now here's why I share all that. I share my pain to help you guys learn. This is similar to what happens with us in life. We make choices that are socially approved but not spirit approved. We follow trends, not truth. We choose what looks clever instead of what is actually godly. It seems right, we say. But as Proverbs 14:12 says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. Trust me, I get it. It feels right in the moment. Everybody else may be doing it. But once the bottom drops out, we all end up praying the same thing. Lord, get me off this ride. And that's why I want to talk to you guys today about wisdom from above. Because let's be real, life's a wild ride, is it not? I mean, yeah, it can be beautiful, it can be exciting. You know, God's doing incredible things. But if we don't operate in godly wisdom, this ride can get off the rails in a hurry. And it's not because God has failed us in some fashion, but it's because we try to navigate life with worldly knowledge and not godly wisdom. Now I can see some, as I was looking at this, I'm like, man, is there a difference? But there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. At first, when I was reading it, I was like, are they not the same? But here's the difference. Knowledge is having the information. Wisdom is knowing how to apply it. Knowledge can help you make money, but wisdom helps you manage it. Knowledge can build a family, but wisdom helps you keep it together. Knowledge gives you the facts, but wisdom gives you the focus. The truth is, knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. It can make you confident but not careful. It can make you informed but not transformed. It can make you educated but not godly. So let's look at James 3:17 and see what godly wisdom really looks like. He says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. What James is saying here is that there's a kind of wisdom that comes from experience, but then there's a kind of wisdom that comes from encounter. Knowledge is gained through learning, but godly wisdom comes from above. That's why some of the smartest people in the world, maybe you know some of these people, they're so smart, but they make some of the worst choices. And it's because godly wisdom doesn't come from head knowledge, it comes from above. Now check out how James begins his list. He says, the wisdom from above is first pure. And this brings me to my first truth today, which is this: wisdom is pure. The word pure in the Greek literally means without contamination, clean, unmixed, genuine. In other words, heavenly wisdom, it doesn't play games. It's not two-faced. It doesn't say one thing on Sunday and live another way on Monday. It's consistent. It's honest. It's the same in private as it is in public. That's why purity comes first. It has to start with a clean heart. Because if the source is contaminated, then everything that flows from it will be too. James said in Matthew 5:8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You see, the purer the heart, the clearer you see God. Now let me say this. Sometimes we can confuse purity with perfection. We think, if I've ever failed, if I've ever messed up, then I cannot be pure. But that's not the case. Purity of heart isn't about what's on your record. It's about your direction. You can have a messy past and still have a pure heart if your heart's turned towards Jesus. Think about it. David had a past. Peter had a past. Paul had a past. But all of them became mighty men of God. Why? Because they pursued God with all of their hearts. Psalms 51:6 says, "Behold, you delight in truth and the inward being, and you teach me wisdom in the secret heart." That's such a cool verse. In the secret heart. That quiet place between you and God where nobody else can see. That's where your pure pursuit begins. It's there where real wisdom takes root. Think of it like this. You can't build a wise life on a dishonest foundation. It's like trying to hang a door on a crooked frame. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I have. And I may have built that crooked frame, by the way. But no matter how nice it looks, you could have the fresh paint, all the nice hardware. It's still crooked. It's not going to close right. And that's what happens when we try to live wise without living pure. Everything looks good on the outside, but it never quite fits right. What we need to understand is that God isn't impressed by how much we know. He's moved by our obedience. Proverbs 16:2 says, "All the ways of man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit." In other words, you can look good doing the wrong things if your motives aren't right. You can serve in ministry, sing on the team, post all the verses online that you want, but if it's all about you instead of him, it's not purity. It's performance. That's why godly wisdom says, check your heart before you chase your goals. Because what's the point of gaining the world's applause if you've lost God's approval? So remember, the wisdom from above is first pure. And then that brings me to the second point, which is wisdom brings peace. James says that wisdom from above is peaceable, gentle, and open to reason. In other words, wisdom doesn't stir up strife, it brings peace. It doesn't pick fights, it builds bridges. Maybe I'm going to share a little bit too much, but if you relate to me, don't let me be alone. Have you ever been in an argument where halfway through you totally forgot what you were arguing about? But you kept going anyway because you were just so committed to winning. I may have done that a time or two. I know I'm like spilling the tea on me. You guys are like looking at me all different. You're like, oh, snap. But at least I'm honest. If you're like me, let me tell you, that's not wisdom. That's pride lashing out. Because real wisdom isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout to be strong. It's calm. It's steady. It's anchored. Romans 12:18 says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Notice that Paul doesn't say as long as everybody else cooperates, or as long as they apologize first. It says, as far as it depends on you. It says you take the responsibility for peace. What Paul wants us to understand is that you can't control how others act, but you can control how you react. You can't control their words, but you can control your witness. Remember who we're displaying at all times. I know it's hard to understand sometimes, but Christians, we don't get off days. We don't get to be like, I don't want to act like Jesus today. It's not what we signed up for. In fact, let me just give you a little bit of wisdom that I've learned through life. And if you haven't heard it, I'll be the first. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Sometimes the wisest thing that you can do is say nothing at all and let God handle the situation. Proverbs 17:27 says, "Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, but he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding." Note the phrase, a cool spirit. In Hebrew, it literally means a calm spirit. And a calm spirit illustrates emotional self-control. It's like the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer reacts to the temperature around it, does it not? If the room's hot, it gets hot. If the room's cold, it gets cold. But a thermostat sets the temperature to the room. And that's what godly wisdom does. It doesn't react to chaos, it regulates it. It brings peace where there's pressure. So if godly wisdom is our desire, then we need to understand that when everybody else is heated, wisdom stays calm. Because godly wisdom knows how to listen before it speaks. It seeks to understand before it demands to be understood. It's open to reason, which open to reason means that it's teachable, it's correctable, it's approachable, and humble enough to admit that maybe I don't know everything. It's kind of rare these days. We live in a world where everyone has an opinion, right? Whether you want to hear it or not, they will certainly share it. But heavenly wisdom says, I don't have to prove that I'm right to have peace. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's about the presence of Christ. Jesus said in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Notice that it doesn't say peacekeepers. It says peacemakers. There's a difference. Peacekeepers avoid conflict. Peacemakers bring Christ into the conflict. That's godly wisdom. Because peace isn't a weakness, it's strength under control. It's not running away from confrontation, it's running towards reconciliation. And that leads me perfectly into the next truth. And that's wisdom doesn't just bring peace alone, it also shows mercy. James ends this verse by saying that wisdom from above is full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. Notice that he said that wisdom from above is full of mercy. Not half full, not almost full, but completely full. Because wisdom doesn't ration mercy. It overflows with it. Luke 6:36 says, "Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful." That's not a suggestion, that's a reflection. In other words, if you've received mercy, you should reflect mercy. And we have all received mercy from the Father, have we not?
Amen.
The funny or sad thing, I guess, about all this is that we love mercy when we need it, but we kind of get really stingy when it's time to give it. Now, I know it's easy to say, "Lord, forgive me," and it's harder to say, "Lord, help me forgive them," but that's the thing about godly wisdom. It doesn't hold grudges. It upholds grace. It doesn't keep score. It keeps showing love. I heard a story of a woman who said, I'll forgive, but I will never forget. Don't worry, it wasn't about any of you. She said, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget. And her pastor said, that's fine, just make sure you don't bring it up again. She replied, oh, I won't bring it up unless they do. He said, then you haven't buried the issue, you've planted it. Because when you plant unforgiveness instead of burying it, it doesn't stay small, it grows. And when you've planted unforgiveness and offense in your heart, what grows out of it is bitterness. And bitterness will always be in conflict with mercy. Hebrews 12:15 says, see to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. That's a strong word, defiled. Because bitterness doesn't just mess you up, it spills over and poisons everything around you. Your relationships, your worship, even your peace. But mercy uproots bitterness. It loosens the soil of unforgiveness so the Holy Spirit can plant peace into your heart instead. Colossians 3:13 says, bear with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. What I love about that verse is it doesn't just tell you what to do, it tells you how to do it. It says, forgive as the Lord forgave you. How did he forgive you? Freely, completely, lovingly. Now, I know it's easier to preach than it is to practice. Because some of you have been hurt pretty deep. I know there's some things in my life where I've been cut to the core. Maybe you've been betrayed, rejected, lied about, left behind. You can name it, on and on. And for you, for whatever reason, forgiveness feels impossible. But let me encourage you. You can be free of that bitterness. And it starts with this truth. Forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. If you wait to feel like forgiving, you'll never get there. Because forgiveness is something that you do by faith, not something you feel by mood. And here's the beautiful thing. When you forgive, you don't lose power, you gain peace. Because forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself out of a prison. And to me, that sounds like godly wisdom. And that godly wisdom shows mercy. It says, I'm not going to repay evil for evil. I'm going to overcome evil with good. It says, I won't let yesterday's hurt dictate tomorrow's hope. And when we live that way, let me tell you, the world notices. Because mercy is rare in this world. So if you want to be full of mercy, stay close to the one who is mercy, which is Jesus. Amen. So to sum it all up, what we've seen here today is that James is calling us to godly wisdom, and that starts in our hearts and shows up in our lives. And if you're anything like me and you know that you need godly wisdom, I need it every second of every day, then let's listen to James one last time. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. God doesn't withhold wisdom. He's just waiting for your surrender. So before we close, I want to invite you to do exactly that. I want you to just take a moment. And I want you to stop striving to be right and start surrendering to the one who is right. I want you to stop relying on information and start walking in his revelation. I want you to stop operating in what's cool, calm, and calculated and start trusting in what he can cultivate in your life. That's the wisdom from above, and that's wisdom that matters. Not this worldly wisdom that everybody else is trying to share. Would you guys stand with me?